Hi, my name is Terrence Flowers, and today I have the honor to be interviewing the Greg Countryman. How you doing, sir?
All right, pretty good. Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate you having me.
Thank you for letting me interview you. I've heard of you for a long time. I saw your name on the cars, and you know, who that?
Right.
But a lot of people don't know who you are. So I want you to let people, the viewers, know where you were raised at and where you come from.
I'm a proud product of South Columbus. I grew up off Casita Road. When we first moved here, we lived in Alpine apartments, and once we got situated, we moved over one block over to 4203 Swan Street. So my roots began for me off of Casita Road. I attended Casita Road Elementary School, Southern Junior High School, which is not there anymore. And I'm a proud graduate of Baker High School, 1984. Lions. I'm a proud product of South Columbus. Started out here, I was born in Plains, Georgia. My father was stationed in Fort Benning. That's what brought us here. And so I grew up in South Columbus, and my mother taught me two things early. That's faith and hard work. So at age 7, since 7, I've been working. I started out pushing lawnmowers and raking yards. And so that's how I started making my money early on. And through faith, my mother was a praying woman. My mother was a Christian woman. And that's why even today, you look on my Facebook page and I'm trying to uplift people through Christ every single day, because I feel like that when people are having bad days, that when you inject Christ into it, it always makes it better. And I believe, as the word says, that through Christ all things are possible. But I graduated in '84 from Baker High School, and like my other friends, I was not able to go up to college. I had some challenges early on. I had a really bad stuttering problem. I had a learning disability to where I really had problems reading. If I read something, I couldn't tell you what it said or anything. It just didn't click for me. And so by the time my friends graduated college, and they were coming back, I still hadn't been able to enter college because I couldn't pass the entrance exam. I still had problems reading, and when I did enter college, I had to take all remedial courses. And so, but I learned early on that persistence overcomes resistance, and I was able to, through faith, because when you know that God has something for you, you know, He's going to always put you in the right place, always open up the right doors, and always put the right people around you. And my stuttering started to get better. My learning got better. But when I was able to shift from one place to the next place, God started to peel off those layers for me. And that's when I was able to graduate from college once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. I ended up teaching on the collegiate level, and even teaching on the collegiate level, I taught 3 ways. I taught hands-on, I taught through video, and I taught through book. And because I understood early on that people learn differently. And so when teachers are not focusing on the whole student, that's where we lose a lot of our young people, because we have to realize that having mental illnesses is real. And so we see a lot of our young men and our young women that they're challenged today, but are we willing to roll up our sleeves and go the extra mile and to teach them the way that they need to be taught? Because I think that when we can, you know, really work with our young men and our young women, that we can achieve great things. I have a junior marshal program where since 2005, I've had the privilege of working with nearly 2,000 young boys and young girls. We've had a 100% success rate.
That's all right.
A 100%.
You mentioned, you said 1 time, 2 times, 3, so those are degrees?
Right.
Well, flex one time real quick.
Yeah.
Mr. Countryman, what the degrees in?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a graduate of
degrees in.
I'm a graduate of Georgia Military College, where I received my associates. I have a Bachelor of Science from Troy State University. I'm a graduate of Georgia Regional Command College. I have an MPA from Columbus State. I have a master's in ministry from OCU, Ohio Christian University, bestowed a doctorate of philosophy and Christian counseling. So, you know, I've done it all. I've done it all. And then I taught on a collegiate level And I made it to. I was promoted to assistant professor at Georgia Military College.
How was life growing up? Let's go back to the past again, because you said your father was in the military. How was life growing up on the south side of Columbus back then?
It was a lot different then. We had a lot of educators. We had a lot of military people. Back then, we had the street light theory going on. When the street lights came on, you knew where you needed to be at. And back then, the neighbors could talk to you. They could discipline you if need be. But things have changed over the years. Even my wife grew up one block from me, so my wife grew up off Casita Road also. So we are both products of South Columbus. And even when I shot my first commercial for running for sheriff, I shot it right there in the parking lot of Joe's Barbershop, which is Alpine sits on one side, and then Swan Street is on the other side. But I wanted to go back to my roots, because as long as I'm in position of power, I never want to become lost in where I am. I always want to go back and be able to humble myself and appreciate where I am and how I got there. And that's one thing that I try to focus on. Up until June of this year, I worked a part-time job just like my deputies do. It's nothing to come in the office and to see me vacuuming my floor, because I vacuum the floor in the office to keep me humble, but I do that because if I ask my deputies to do the same thing, I don't ask them to do anything what I wouldn't, couldn't, and hadn't done.
Exactly. Okay, so I want to know what actually got you into law enforcement. I know you for being the marshal, and what got you in law enforcement, and more specifically, how'd you get involved in the Marshals Office? Right.
I started out. My career started in December of 1990. I started out with the Columbus Housing Police. There, I was assigned to a drug vice task force, to where our mission was to go out and to knock down drug-related crimes in public housing. I was assigned to a unit with guys that had like minds, and we went out. We reduced drug-related crimes in public housing in 1 year by 50% in 1 year. But we did that because we first understood the mission. We knew the caliber of constituency that we were dealing with. And so we knew that at the same time that although we had to be tough on crime, we had to understand the focus of the mission was still community-oriented policing. And so we could be tough on crime, but still treat people the way that they needed to be treated. And so I think that even today, that if we go back to what used to work, that we would not have some of the same problems that you see us happening now. And from there, I did my stint there. Then I went to the Muscogee County Sheriff's Office, where I had the privilege of working in the jail, court division, field services division. I worked fugitives task force. And one day I was sitting on the couch and just said that I was going to run for marshal. And I did that. I stepped out on faith. I don't know why I said it. And I stepped out on faith and ran for marshal, and I won that office in 2004. January of 2005, I took office as marshal, and for the past almost 16 years, this will be 4 terms that I've served as marshal. When I took over the marshal's office, it was almost literally on its deathbed, and through faith and having God to sort of guide me through what I was doing, within 3 years, the marshal's office was ranked 2nd in the nation in our 2nd year. In our 3rd year, we were ranked number 1 in the nation. And so that's something that no other marshal, no one else in this city has ever done. And so that's what we can do with teamwork. But when you understand the mission and the overall purpose of the mission, all things are possible if you stay centered in Christ. And that's why I will never leave Christ, because when I leave Christ, it's going to be like sinking. Right now, you can almost walk on water because my eyes are centered on Him. But when you take your eyes off of Him, then you're on your own. And so I never want to be on my own. And so in leadership, even winning the Democratic primary, nobody had ever thought that we would get to a point to where to where we are now, because they abolished the Marshal's Office. when I decided to run for sheriff, they said, well, let's get rid of the marshal's office.
Yeah, hold that thought.
Okay.
I was just going to get to that.
Okay, great.
I think the marshal's one of those things, I think I have an understanding, but what are the main responsibilities? I know evictions are one of them, but what are some of the other, because some people just don't know. They're like, you know, but I remember, you know, I ain't a spring chick. I got a little age on me.
All right.
So I remember watching Westerns with my mom. And I ain't never really, you hear about the sheriff, you hear about the marshal, go get the marshal.
Right.
You hear about the marshal.
Right.
So I knew it was something just more than eviction. So explain what's the responsibilities of the marshal and why did the city get rid of the marshal's office, or what was the whole thing behind that?
Okay. Our marshal's office has a very, very rich history. It goes back to 1828. Well, 1831. The sheriff's office goes back to 1828.
Okay.
But we go back to 1831, and when you see it on TV, some of those are federal marshals like Matt Dillon, Gunsmoke.
Gunsmoke.
That's a federal marshal, which has territory. If you go and watch the rifleman, Micah, the marshal there, he's a more town marshal or a county marshal.
Chuck, what's his name?
Chuck Connor.
Chuck Connor,
rifleman. Oh yeah, rifleman. And I'm big on the westerns, and so
I was forced to watch them.
Oh really? No, my mom watched them. I watched them. My grandmother, and my kids are forced to watch them now today because I love to watch marshals, westerns rather. But we were found in 1831. What the marshal's office did, well, back then the marshal and the mayor ran the city pretty much. We had aldermen back then and not city councilors. In August 12th of 1915, they changed the duties of the marshal, and they tied the marshal in to having a municipal court, which is basically small claims court, because back then you had a lot of people that were bringing cases into to the higher court. Someone stealing someone's cow. You know, somebody's taking someone's horses or whatever back early on, and so it was called super court back then, but the superior courts, they were bogged down with those type of cases. So they created a marshal's office, a clerk of the municipal court, and a municipal court to handle those type of cases. So fast forward where we are today. We do over 30 different types of civil processes, from levies, garnishment, 5-phase, evictions, you know, you name it. If it's dealing with small claims court, then the marshal's office is going to be involved in that. We take in roughly about 5,800 to 6,000 evictions each year. And so we are a busy office. The municipal court is one of the busiest courts in this county, bar none. And so that's where we are, and that's what we do. A lot of people ask the difference. Well, what's the difference between the sheriff and the marshal? Well, the marshal is a municipal officer, which means that he's a county officer, belongs to the city. The sheriff is recognized by the state as a constitutional officer. So every county has to have a sheriff. They don't have to have a police chief or a marshal, but you must have a sheriff. The sheriff carries the big stick. The sheriff has very broad authority. The sheriff is over every court here in Columbus, as far as protecting the courts, protecting the government center. By state statute, the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer for the county, and also the keeper of the peace for the county. And so the sheriff has the authority of the sheriff is so broad. If the state troopers, if he didn't want state troopers in the county, the sheriff can pick up the phone and call the commissioner and say, effective immediately, we don't want your troopers in Muscogee County.
He's the big dog of the county.
He or she is the big dog in the county. And so for nearly 200 years, we've never had an African American sheriff, period. And that's why this election and having a sheriff, I can't tell you the number of 90-plus-year-old women that have asked me to come to their house because they just wanted to see what I look like, because in their lifetime, they've never seen this. I went to go visit a 94-year-old 2 weeks ago. Before that, I visited one that was, I think, 99, about last month. So this is history in itself. And so, and I didn't realize that what it meant to a lot of people in the city, and because it has such a rich historical value to it, because this is something that, you know, that people will remember in their lifetime. And so that's the difference between those two offices. One is a municipal office that is limited to municipal court. The sheriff mans and protects all of the other courts, from juvenile court, state court, recorder's court, superior court, anything involving a state building or a state entity. If it's not the GBI or the state troopers, the sheriff will go in and deal with those cases.
Why did the city decide to get rid of the marshal's office? And do you think you stayed marshal if they wouldn't have got rid of it?
If I had stayed marshal, I don't think that they would have brought this up because this was brought up several times. It was brought up twice and soundly defeated through a mandate of the vote. But this has gone through consolidation also.
They did something. Sir, they overrode and went to the state level to do something.
Right. This time, well, what happened when I announced that I was running for sheriff in April, I believe it was in June, the current sheriff went to the council and asked that the marshal's office be placed under the sheriff's office. And so the council went with it. They used the Citizen Review Board for that, to bring that to the council. No one asked me anything about it. They felt like it was the right timing because there would be no incumbent in the office, although that there were two people that were interested in running for the office, but they went straight to the legislative body to go ahead and abolish the office. And so with that happening, that meant that at the end of this year that the marshal's office would not be. And there was some politics involved in it, but no one ever thought that I would be sitting here when they did that. And so,
they would have did that.
And so the thing is that when you're faithful, you understand that God will prepare a table for you in the presence of your enemies. And the Bible also says that, it says that what the enemy meant for evil, that God will use it for his own good. I love where God has brought me, and I think it's a great place to be.
In the lieu of what's going on in our climate right now, not to say that other stuff wasn't good, for to put a little pressure on you now.
Bring it on.
We have a problem.
Okay.
United States is a lot of pressure, I would say, and it's a lot of coming from the left and the right. And I think a lot of times the people in the middle is who's really affecting. You've been hearing people say defund the police. You've been police brutality. Police start getting charged for crimes, even in our own city. So, what are any issues that you have with the current office, not a person, but the office, and what would you change when you are elected?
Well, one thing that I made mandatory for every marshal deputy is that they had to go through fair and impartial policing. I talked with one of my captains this week, and I told him that when we take office in January, that will be priority. Fair and impartial policing is not a 30-minute block of diversity training. It's a 8 to 12 hour block of training to where we focus on biases, because we all have biases. We focus on implicit biases, which are the ones that are hidden within, that we don't talk about, that we sometimes miss in the hiring process. Then we talk about explicit biases, to where you may see someone that may display something on their Facebook page or either something that has to deal with hatred. And so we see a lot of things that are happening around us in Minnesota and other places. And those things are, hitting home closer today than it was then. But we saw these trends coming even from 1992 with Rodney King. That really should have pricked the conscience of what we do in law enforcement. However, incident after incident after incident, it kept happening, and we are where we are here today because I think that society is saying that enough is enough, and I've been preaching for the past 10 years that if we don't change the way we police in the 21st century, that society will dictate the way we police and dictate our policies. We're here right now at this place because I think that some of the things could have been solved early on. And so when we see things like that, we have to focus on the science of why things happen. And we have to understand that even in, not just in our field, but in the medical field, education field, that there are bad apples there. And I wholeheartedly believe that 99% of law enforcement officers are working for the good of the people. But it's that 1% that will poison the 99%. And that's why we must build those bridges with the community. Every marshal deputy, every single day, has to talk to 3 people and write down their names. That's how we bridge that gap. You will never hear anyone talk negative about the Marshals Office because we are community oriented. We go into the community, we know our community, the community trusts the Marshals Office. We've done details, and I can't tell you the number of people that have said that next time I get arrested, I want to get arrested by a marshal deputy. That's not a good thing, but it attests to the level of professionalism, humanity, because I always tell, and I've always preached this, that when we deal with the human being, deal with it as if that's your relative. Because we have to understand that we've all done things, but we just didn't get caught. And so for us to have a harsh spirit towards people, when I was a sheriff's deputy on patrol, I've never made but one DUI case. Because back in my single days, I had a problem drinking. I had a problem drinking and driving, and I was still in law enforcement. But however, I was not going to be a hypocrite. So if I pulled over somebody and I knew that they were drunk, I would either take them down to the jail and let them sit down there for 4 hours, because we could do that then. Yeah, in the drunk tank for 4 hours, and then let the jail release them, or either call someone to come and pick them up, or either pull the car over. But somehow, some way, I did not make that arrest because I had to focus on myself, and I had to get rid of that problem that I had before I could arrest someone else doing the same thing that I was doing. And so that's where the conscience of what we do. But in the 21st century, I was speaking to my chief deputy about this today, that in the 21st century that we are going to have more teachable moments. And so as sheriff, I want to be able to use drug forfeiture money to go out and to buy up certain things and reward people and pull people over, not for doing things wrong, but learn to pull people over for what they're doing right. You know, because we have to make sure that everything that we do, that we allow the public to be our billboard. Because when we leave there, what impact, what imprint do we want to leave on that person's conscience when we leave them? And so we don't want to be viewed like the rest of like society views some people. Now, as sheriff, the sheriff has broad authority, but as sheriff, I'm going to impanel my own citizen review board, because I have no problem with the public looking over my shoulder. If we can look over the public's shoulder, the public should be able to look over our shoulder. And that's the spirit of transparency. And if we can go back to having a town mentality, I think of Andy Griffin, and I watch a lot of old shows, but Andy Griffin taught me one of the best lessons there is, when Barney was locking up the whole town. And did they violate the law? Yes. But Andy had to tell them that sometimes, Barney, that you have to look at a person's heart. And I did not realize until, because I used to be hard about people not showing up to work on time. And if I was to work on time, other people, but those other people were married. And I didn't realize until I was married and was an instant father, because when I married my wife, I married my child too, our child. But I started running late because I had to get him to school, had to go through school zones, and had to go home and change cars and go to work, and so I better understood. And so that helped me to be more family oriented as marshal and to be patient when we have deputies that are running late, because now I better understand that why people do certain things. And we have to understand that officers can have a bad day. We have to understand that citizens can have a bad day. And when we can come to the reality of understanding the human side of things, that we can better build those relationships. Because what I see happening today right now is that you may have some people that say Black Lives Matters over here. You may have some that say Blue Lives Matter over here, but all we're doing is just shouting at each other. And if we're not building a bridge to try to find some common ground, and that's why that fair and impartial policing. Now, it's not an easy course to go through, because you see shouting, you see crying, and because a lot of people are where they are and may not even realize that they are offending someone because of the way that they were raised, what they were taught, how they lived. And so it's not always racism. It's just the way that some people live and the way that they taught.
The culture.
Yeah, and the culture coming up. And so I think that if we're going to police in the 21st century, that we must understand that we have a different culture today, because millennials are not like baby boomers and other people.
Definitely a culture.
Definitely. The Generation Y is not, when you see people marching today in these marches, it's not just black people. You see Hispanics, you see whites, you see Asian people. And in some Black Lives Matter movement marches, it's just all white. And so that's that culture that we have to understand that we're in today. And so being successful now, policing in the 21st century, we have to understand how to police.
Well, speaking of police, and I don't know if this falls up under police, and I would probably say, the detention part of it. You are about to inherit a hot mess, sir. We just, a couple weeks ago, we had a murder down at the jail. We've had overcrowding at the jail. When things like that happen, and not to mention COVID, that just changes everything.
Right.
I'm not going to say whose fault, because when somebody commits murder, obviously it's the person, but who does the buck stop at? You mentioned mental health earlier. And what kind of diversion or of other practices will you implement in the jail to keep mental health people away from general population?
Well, we have to make sure that the jail and prisons are the biggest mental health facility there is. When we look at what's happening now, if you go back and I look at the trends that are happening around us, if we look at what's happening in Eugene, Oregon, they did research and they found out that almost 20% of their calls involve people with mental health illnesses. And so what they did is that they started hiring counselors to go out on some of these calls with them. So instead of them dispatching an officer, the officer could go there but allow the plainclothes counselor to go in that is a subject matter expert dealing with mental health issues. One of the things that I want to do is to look at the medical contract for the Muscogee County Jail. I think it's paramount that we have clinicians and mental health experts that when we check people in, that there are the basic questions that you ask: are you hurt, sick, injured? Have you ever thought about killing yourself? But there is something that a person that works in the field can pick up on that correctional officer or that deputy is not trained for. And so you can ask all of the right questions, but if you don't have that mental health piece to see that this person is triggered, that this person is nervous, that this person is acting funny, that this person has a certain eye movement about them, because when you start asking about what type medications are you taking, you can have a nurse to ask those questions, but if that nurse is not a psychiatric nurse, then then you don't know, because you need to start asking questions like, when was the last time you took your medicine? This incident that happened, and we can be backseat drivers all day long, but even the last incident that happened in the county jail, we all knew in the public that this guy, it was a racially motivated. But if we go back and look at it, we have to understand, because I started looking at some of the comments, and some of the people that knew him were, white females, and they said that he sat on their porch with them laughing, was jovial and happy, but something triggered. And even when he said that something came to his mind and made him want to, that should let you know that either he's off his medication or either he needs stronger medication.
That's a point too.
Because those are psychiatric issues, and those are things that sometimes that we miss. But this was a travesty, and because
I guess not to cut you off, the question I want, I guess, procedure.
Yeah.
Was that, in your eyes, was that proper procedure? After he made that statement that he specifically wanted to kill white men, was that proper procedure to put a white man in the cell with him?
It would not have been proper or wise if everyone knew. And so this is going to be a process to where it's going to involve litigation to understand, did they know what they...
If I'm wrong, correct me though, but when you were arrested, you go through a medical eval.
Yeah.
So is there any word on, was he on medication? They knew he was on medication then? Or is it because of the nature of the crime? Are you put in a single man cell till you get the evaluation? Or what's the process for that?
Well, with COVID-19 going on, it's my understanding that they were in a quarantine cell, and they had been there for over 8 days together. And so as far as what happened coming in, the person that booked them in may not have known, because at the county jail, they work 12-hour shifts. And so you work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So when you go home, you may not watch the news, and depending on the cycle, but I don't want to, backseat drive here, because working down at the jail, I understand how this possibly could have happened. But still, it's hard to figure out that how someone didn't know it, because even if they walked him into the courtroom and the deputies walked him over there, the deputies could have assumed that hearing the courtroom testimony that everyone else knew it. So if there's a lack of communication in there, I think that, well, not think, but what I'm going to do is that there are credentialing, when they credential someone to go into the county jail, two of the questions that I'm going to ask and add on to that is that, have you been charged with anything under the Federal Bias Act, which is the hate crime? And then ask, under the Georgia hate crime bill, are you charged with anything under the Georgia hate crime bill? Because if those two questions were added to that, then you would know exactly where this kid should be, but he wasn't charged under a hate crime bill.
Exactly.
Also, and so those are things that we can backseat quarterback all day long. But the crux of the matter is that we have a death, and that death of that person is connected to other people with emotions and feelings and love for that person, even the person that committed the murder. That one of the questions is going to probably be and raise up is that, well, what did you do to protect my son? He was already there for this purpose. And so it's going to be a whirlwind. And I pray that this can be resolved, which I don't think it will before my watch.
Oh, you gonna catch it.
Right. Because,
And with that being said, sir, and I'm going to wrap it up soon. I know you're a busy man. I pray for you, sir.
Thank you.
And we've been talking, we've been seeing each other these marches and stuff. And you know where we stand. We in the South, and you're about to make history. And with that being said, about to be the first black sheriff of Muscogee County. These things I worry about. When I think about, I say, how are they going to try to bring this brother down, this mentor? I let y'all watch, especially your religious stuff that you put on your page. And first thing comes to my mind is stuff like budget cuts and stuff like that. What is your biggest fear that if you win you're elected sheriff, that they're going to try to do to make, because they're going to try to do it?
Well, even right now, I was speaking with my chief deputy before I came here about my concerns that I've had to face some harsh criticism, but when I start seeing people that are sending subtle messages to me, and that would just outright tell a lie about me, even over social media, to to make it look like I'm one way when I'm not. That's one aspect of it. But I've always feared that, because this is a position that, long as I've been in public safety for almost 30 years, that it was always said that we would never have an African American sheriff or an African American mayor. We're on the brink of us having our first African American sheriff. And I know that we don't live in a perfect world, that some people will try to do some things to undermine me, to set me up for failure. And that's why I have to pray that God will lead me and to guide my path and to order my steps. Because I posted something on Facebook yesterday that in the midst of everything that the traps that my enemies have tried to place me in, that God has allowed them to fall into their own snares. And so I'm very vocal about that, because when God gives me something, I don't worry about if they're going to try to set me up for failure. I worry about my life more so than anything, because I think about my fraternity brother, Derwin Brown, when when there were some things going on in the Sheriff's Office in DeKalb County, but he was murdered in his driveway. And so those are the things that I think about. I think about my sons and their safety, my wife, and things like that, because I just want to make it to the point to where I can see the day to where I can raise my hand. Once I'm in office, I'm not too much worried about that, but it's just the mental anxieties of going through what I'm going through to get through November the 3rd. And so we feel good about where we are. And I don't put anything past what some people are doing, but the fact of the matter is that people are coming our way, that even we didn't send out one letter and we outraised everybody combined as far as fundraising. And so I have a reputation in Columbus of being a fair person with great crossover appeal. But I've always been a person that's straight, no chaser. And so, and that's why I value where I am and how far God has brought me, because I'm not even supposed to be sitting where I am, but through His grace, I'm here. And that's why I reach back into the community, because just me winning doesn't mean that when the whole community wins, we win. I heard one of the wealthiest guys in Columbus say that we can't have a great Columbus until we have a great South Columbus. Yeah. And so we have to go back in and redevelop South Columbus. We have to go back in and we have to restore public trust. But we do that by us having a sheriff that has far reach into the community, that has a trust of the community, because things that I'm worried about, I want to go into the most challenging parts of our community for the guys that need a fresh start. Now we have a DA that we can work with, and that can help to get records expunged for first-time offenders, and so that these young men and young women can have a fresh start. Now there are some people that will have to be in jail, and I have no problems with that, because in order for us to clean up our community, we have to understand that there are certain elements here. But to go back to your question, I do fear about what could possibly happen physically, but I'm always ready for that too.
I think you are shielded. I can tell you are a man of faith. Your faith will guide you. In closing, thank you for the interview, guys. This man is overqualified. If that means, not only do you come from the streets, you've got 4 degrees. You got and I think this is an important one too. I know we can do this all day. He said admin. I was listening. That's real important, because you have to know how to run a jail from an admin point. I'm talking about from the budget to the food and just the schedule. It's just so much stuff. So you're very qualified. The community needs you. Well, Columbus needs you. And I'm going to do anything that I can to help you. Just your camera right here. If there's anything that you want to say to the viewers, especially about how they can register to vote and situation about voting, because how things are now, it's kind of crazy, and people don't know what's going on with all this misinformation out. So anything you want to tell to the audience?
What I would ask for those that are questioning that, can you go and vote? I have a brother that wanted to ask that same question. He asked the same question because he has some things that happened in his past. but he could vote. And so for those of you that are wondering if you can vote, don't go to the polls and doubting that if you can't vote. Go and ask them to pull up your information, because you can probably vote and don't even know it. But I would ask you to go out and to vote early, to vote with a passion, to vote as if your life depends on it, because this will be one of the most critical elections that we've had in our lifetime.
How can they get the information that you just said? Where can they go check from? Like,
you can go to the Columbus Elections Office. You can look it up. You can Google Columbus Elections Office. You can speak with the director, Nancy Boren, or either speak with Jeanette James. One of those two people can direct you in the right direction. Early vote starts October the 12th, and it ends on October the 30th. Election day is November the 3rd, but I caution you to go to the polls early. When people waited to go to the polls in the primary, they had a lot of issues to happen, so it's best to go ahead and just get it out the way early. And I appreciate the young people that voted for the first time, because they didn't think that their vote mattered. Your vote did matter. Look at where we are today. Yes. And so we have a DA that no one thought would be here. We have a candidate that won the Democratic primary that people undermined it as if I would be here. But God has a purpose, and God is shaking up things. And so we need you to go to the polls and to shake things up, because in 2021, we need to celebrate, because in 2023, we need to celebrate again. In 2025, we need to go and celebrate again. So go and do your part, because I'm going to do my part, and God bless you.
God bless you. Appreciate you, Mr. Countryman.
Appreciate you, sir.
All right,
Thank
that
you,
was
brother.
Voices of Columbus exclusive interview with Greg Countryman, the next Sheriff of Muscogee County. I am Terrence Flowers. We are out. Peace.
Peace.